What is going on, kids? It is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X-Lair to provide you my very deep and insightful reaction to the season 1 finale of Cloak and Dagger. This just aired tonight on Hulu. It's one of these like Marvel shows that are being produced like outside of Netflix, outside of ABC. I believe it's being produced on. Oh no, it's Hulu. It's Hulu. The Runaways, I was going to say, is on Freeform. So this is like Marvel shit all over the place. This show, there was a very brief moment where it was connected to the Netflix stuff, right? There was a mention about the cop, the female cop that's helping our heroes, about her basically knowing Misty Knight and her coming from New York. So that may be just like an Easter egg, or it may actually be a solid connection to the Netflix universe. So, and if that is the case, and we know the Netflix universe is connected to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then this is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. But like, those connections are very tenuous. They are very not willing to just like lean in, be 100% all in on that connection. And it's kind of weird, but I get it, because like you don't want to taint what's going on in the film universe, because it is, as far as I'm concerned right now, flawless. With, you know, potential mishaps on television. Of course, there are different executives involved. They're completely different departments of Marvel, of Disney, and so, you know, there is that whole thing. I really like this show, folks. It's a really enjoyable show. Yeah, I saw Runaways. I really enjoyed that as well. I've seen all of the Netflix stuff. The only thing I have not seen is the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I gave up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was just weighing on me, like the ways in which they were trying to figure out how to keep it interesting. It just felt a little bit too much for me. So I have stayed away from that, but I've watched everything else, and I have to say, like, overall, like, things are working really well. I like this show. Can it be better? Fuck yeah, it can be better. Like, they could spend a little bit more fucking money on it. Maybe they will next season, you know, because there is some really cool like iconography for Cloak and Dagger, specifically like Cloak and his like really animated cloak, and how that sort of is complemented by Dagger, right? Like her really vibrant light. There wasn't enough of that. Even though I understand the show maybe doesn't have a huge budget, I would have at least wanted like one really good sequence where like it's full on Cloak, the sort of shit you would see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, spend fucking top-notch money, give us what we deserve, you know? That aside, the fact that, like, it did sort of miss the mark for me in terms of just, like, the visual representation of the characters. The characters themselves and the show itself, I think, was successful because of the acting. I think they had some really strong actors, and, like, you have some really strong young actors, like, playing these roles, and they're so committed, and they're so able to like really relay authenticity in their performances, to the extent that it really makes it feel, you know, as authentic as possible within this context, and really resonates well, you know, overall, because of the fact they weren't spending a lot of money on the effects. And they certainly watered down a lot of the sort of origin, a lot of you know, the lore of Cloak and Dagger. All that aside, like, the only thing really left is like the characters, right? Like the people themselves. Like, they want to make the audience care about these characters. Yeah, they're young. I'm not. I'm 41, so I'm older. So it's normally would be hard for me to like really get on board with a bunch of like teenagers. as like my main protagonist, but that worked here because of the actors. Like, I think casting should be given like all the kudos in the world because they did a really good job of filling those roles and really kind of making these characters feel as though, regardless of how ridiculous a lot of this stuff was that was going on around him, and by ridiculous I mean within the context of the story, not like as like a ridiculous show that was silly. That wasn't the case at all. It was a ridiculous set of circumstances that they found themselves in, and the fact that there wasn't a lot of money put into, the sort of representing some of the larger than life elements of that. Again, like, it didn't really bother me that much because the characters really resonated strongly for me, and it has everything to do with the actors. So that is very similar to what happened with Runaways. I think that's such a great young cast, and like everybody was really good at what they were doing, at the characters they were playing, relaying authenticity of emotion and ultimately a sense of realism, for what was going on. This was very similar to Runaways in terms of that, because Runaways also kind of didn't have the highest budget, was a bit ambitious at times, and in the end, like, what really carried it was like these characters, and like it's the same thing here. Now, the story itself was actually pretty cool as well. There was a lot of stuff going on with the characters, but it was all grounded in like their origin, and it all did come to a very nice crescendo in this last episode. I have to say, like, regardless of the fact that the budget's not that great, everything else is pretty good. The writing's pretty good. Directing is pretty good. I mean, it's nowhere near like the level of Legion. I don't know if any of you have seen Legion, but I'm a big fan of Legion. Obviously, I'm a big X-Men fan. This is like the X-Slayer. And if you haven't seen it, and you're gonna catch season 2, I did a full episode by episode review of those, which you can check out. And also, I did a full season 1, just one video, kind of wrapping up. Much like this is for Cloak and Dagger season 1, I did one for Legion. So check those out if you're interested. But there's like a level of artistry for that show that is pretty fucking like astronomical. Like every aspect of that show is art. And so even though it doesn't deliver for me 100% pure X-Men, the fact that they are 100% committed to like making a work of art really makes the show like kind of transcend like this like standard kind of like television tier of entertainment that these shows can fall into, like this one falls into, and Runaways, and a lot of the Netflix ones. This show overall was missing some of that artistry. I think if they had some of that, they would have been a lot better and creative at representing the powers of Cloak and Dagger, and it would have felt a little bit more interesting. But in the end, Cloak was just wearing a cloak, and Dagger had some like glowy daggers. That again, like, if you had done that with Legion, like there would have been a lot of attempts to like really kind of play with the elements of visual storytelling, to maybe not be able to spend the kind of money you would need to really represent it in the way that you would want it to be represented, but to be creative in those representations so that, it just feels like something, really, really unique and interesting and captivating to watch. So that the show is missing that. But in this last episode, I have to say, like, there was a really great device that was used in this last episode, which was like sort of kind of retelling the origin of these two people that are drawn together, and it's all kind of woven into like the lore of New Orleans. And so you had like segments kind of going back in time, showing us different instances of like two people coming together during some sort of crisis in that Narlands area, and that leading to like the Narlands area getting saved, being able to make it through plagues, wars, famines, that sort of thing. And the thing that was really wonderful for me was the use of the song Come Sail Away. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. That was not the best rendition of that song, but nonetheless, it's a really great song, and it's got like a build up and a crescendo and a really great climax. They really used that song well in this episode. It was kind of the backbone of the entire thing, and I think it really kind of enhanced that final kind of climactic scene where you thought that one of them was going to have to die. Like they were kind of subtly playing the song without lyrics most of the time in all of those flashbacks. And then finally, when it was time for Cloak and Dagger to kind of have their moment of like saving New Orleans from this like crazy plague that the Roxxon Corporation had brought on, they started to play the full-on song. And then finally, when they both kind of like actualized as like these superpower beings and like use their power to resolve this crisis that the city was facing, like it was full blown like Come Sail Away, and like and it was like the climax of that song, the gathering of angels, da 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 da, you know, and it was such a great compliment to like what was going on, and I was really impressed by it. I was like, all right now, Cloak and Dagger, finally, you're not just telling a story, you're not just giving me Marvel, but you're also you're being creative and artistic in the way that you're representing. And yeah, it happened in the last episode, but I really liked it, you know? I mean, there were hints of that throughout the season, but like this final episode, I think really kind of, in the way that it was structured, in what we saw, in the use of that song, on top of everything that was going on in the episode, it really kind of elevated it for me and really made it feel like something special, which I really appreciate, you know? I really appreciate it because I want that from a Cloak and Dagger television show, you know? So, going back to the comics, right? Like in the comics, they were injected with some drugs, and then they became Cloak and Dagger, and their roles were reversed, right? Tyrone was the poor one, and Tandy was the rich one, but they did wind up in a church together, and then when they were injected with drugs, they both survived and they gained their powers. Later, it was retconned to be revealed that they survived those tests because they were mutants. So then now in the comics that they're mutants, which is really cool because I'm a big fucking mutant fan. They didn't touch upon that at all in this show. They completely switched up the origin. By the way, I just read all that on Wikipedia. I read Cloak and Dagger as a kid. I read the ongoing series, but like really, it kind of died off. And then I only kind of saw them in the big crossovers. Like I remember they were in the Infinity Gauntlet. They were in House of M. You know, they always pop up here and there. In Utopia, they were there during basically, what was that, post House of M, Decimation, and then ultimately the X-Men winding up on Utopia, which was like Asteroid M, right? This asteroid base that Magneto had built in space came to Earth. It crashed to Earth, crashed to the San Francisco Bay, and the X-Men, all the remaining mutants in the world, because it was like 190 something that survived decimation when most mutants were depowered. They wound up on this utopia where they were sort of just kind of like protecting each other because they knew that there was only a few of them left, and that they had to depend on each other to survive and avoid extinction. And I remember Cloak and Dagger were there as well. So they've popped up, but they haven't really been that significant. I notice now that Marvel has started to release an ongoing series, which is good, you know, to coincide with the television show. But nonetheless, I feel like they could have done a bigger push to try to really kind of get these characters out into the general awareness of the Marvel fans of these days. You know, to really kind of build up some more hype for them. But that didn't happen. Anyway, the show itself, I think, will do that. But I think because, like, the quality is not that high, I don't think, like, your average audience member who has now, like, so many possible things to watch, right? There's so many competing options now. Social media, all sorts of really great television shows, all sorts of movies, gaming, etc. Like, in this pool of entertainment possibilities, like, I don't think the average person is going to be like, oh, I gotta watch Cloak and Dagger. I hear it's really fucking special. Because even though us, the Marvel fans or comic book fans or whatever type of fan you are, ended up watching it and enjoying it, I don't think it's at the level where like your average person's going to be talking about it at the water cooler tomorrow. So I don't think it's going to catch fire like that. And I think it has a lot to do with like with the budget. Like give me some good characters, some good representation of those characters. Give me some good storytelling. But if you're gonna create Cloak and Dagger, fucking show me Cloak and Dagger and like it and like make sure that you take full advantage of the full glory of what that could be, which is like this huge, larger than life cloak, just awe-inspiring to witness, this like, I understand that there was a build of him not realizing that he was powerful and then realizing he was, and then realizing he needs a cloak, and then like having the cloak sort of keep getting, upgraded and then ultimately downgraded to his brother's, hoodie, which I thought was touching, of course, but and even though towards the end we saw a little bit more of the Void, and like it just felt cheap, and I hate that, I don't want it to feel cheap. Like there had to be a point where it had to be like full on spectacle Cloak, and then if you're gonna have Tandy fucking throwing fucking the her light daggers, like, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this in the comics. It's very similar to what Gambit does when he like throws his cards. He's got like the curved energy and like the cards kind of flying out of it. Tandy had a similar thing in the comics where it's like the curved white energy and like the white daggers flying out of it. Like, why not give us that at least one time? Because that would look super fucking cool, And try to give Tandy some sort of a fucking costume, not just like a tank top and jeans. I understand, like, you want to keep it grounded. I think, in part, like, there's that whole, Netflix element that they're sort of trying to tap into. But, like, aside from Iron Fist, which was also highly downgraded in terms of the supernatural element because of budget reasons, clearly. Hopefully that won't happen with Season 2, but that happened with Season 1. Like, beyond that, like, the other characters, like Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, like, the way that they were represented was good because, like, their powers aren't these, like, larger-than-life powers, but, like, Cloak and Daggers are, and, like, you can't take the same approach you took with those Netflix shows with these characters because they're super fucking powerful. And even though there was a lot of implying, like, how powerful they are, and really, again, it is more of, like, an origin season, so I will give them a pass on that. It's like, give me some larger than life fucking Cloak and Dagger something. Even in the big climax in the end, like, it was more than we'd seen, but it still wasn't like holy shit, It wasn't like, oh my god, it's the fucking dragons fighting the White Walkers, Game of Thrones spoilers. By the way, if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, check that shit out. It's fucking incredible. Especially before the 6 final seasons come out, which is coming very soon. Apparently the beginning of next year. I'm getting sidetracked here. Back to Cloak and Dagger. So yeah, really enjoyed this final episode. Really enjoyed this story arc. It's completely different from the comics. But, I went along with it. And, like, it was interesting. I like the drama of having Tyrone and Tandy both dealing with, like, the loss of family members and that being sort of the common linchpin that kind of hooks them together. On top of the fact that, because of that experience, they wound up getting these like complementary powers. I like, I like that, like, a lot of the high school stuff didn't come off as cheesy. Everybody was really good. That girl Evita, really fantastic. She was played really well. Her voodoo aunt was played really well as well. Tyrone's parents were played great. Tandy's mom was played great. I like that the show wasn't afraid to, like, kill people. Tandy's mom's boyfriend was killed. You had the cop, that female cop, her boyfriend, cop, killed. There was some bold moves in terms of, like, the violence and how far they were willing to take it. It wasn't like ridiculous. It certainly was not Netflix level of violence, but you know, it was pretty serious drama there a few times, you know, with like murders and the dangers, which I appreciate, because if not, then it kind of could keep it at a really kind of juvenile level where it just feels like a kids show, you know, and like even if some of you that are watching this are like younger in your teens or whatever, like you're gonna eventually grow up, and you're gonna get older, and you're gonna see that, like, you know, your tastes will evolve. It doesn't mean that you can't like something like this, but certainly if it's targeted exclusively to people that are in their teens, and it kind of brings it down to that level in terms of like the seriousness and the violence, etc., then it's not going to resonate beyond, you know, like a few years, you know, and obviously that's not what the world we live in anymore. The world we live in is like, let's produce a bunch of really cool shit that people will want to watch as long as possible because of all these streaming services now that are looking to like really ramp up their content. So yeah, it had to be the drama, the seriousness of the drama had to be at a pretty intense level, and it was. So I was happy about that. Liked all the ancillary characters. Felt the show was a little bit slow at times towards the middle, but I didn't necessarily mind it because the acting was really good. And I knew that it was like taking me somewhere, and even though where it took me was not as spectacular as I would have liked it, I really did like this final episode. We got a bit of a zombie apocalypse-esque type of situation. We got a lot of sort of revelations about Roxxon. We got a really cool, a couple of other interesting supporting characters that were introduced. Specifically the Asian man and his daughter. That I felt was fantastically included, you know, because we don't see enough Asian representation in general, and I like that Marvel Television is really making an effort to make sure that, like, we're not just representing African Americans, we're not just representing Latins, but we're also representing Asians. You know, it's like, it's very inclusive, and that's important. You know, like, everybody needs to be able to see themselves in these worlds. Not just as a reflection, but also as an ideal sort of what we could be, where it's like a balanced society where everybody matters and not just like, you know, Caucasian people, even though I have nothing wrong with Caucasian. I'm half Caucasian myself. I'm also half Latin. But it's important that, you know, we see that, and we saw it here. We saw it in The Runaways to a ridiculous extent there. I love how diverse fucking that was. This was very diverse as well. Loved it. There was a lot to really enjoy here, folks. I mean, if you take away like what it could be and you kind of leave it at what it was enjoyable, you know. But what it could be amazing. Like, if you were to put Cloak and Dagger in the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe, woo! Watch out, folks. We're talking larger than life, amazing representations of Cloak, where like. And Tandy, where it would really kind of just like amaze the senses, you know? Kind of like what would have happened with Medusa if she was in an Inhumans movie that was produced by Kevin Feige versus that abomination that was shown on television. That was actually one thing I did not watch at all. I did not watch one episode of that. And by the way, folks, like, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, or at least you've seen some of my older videos, like, you know, I've been super excited about this Marvel deal, Marvel acquiring Fox. Since it was first announced, I know there's been all these like hurdles of like, oh, the Justice Department, the Federal Trade Commission, they have to approve it, and then there's like these counter bids by Comcast, and then like, you know, there's all this drama, and now it's pretty much done. I believe the Federal Trade Commission still needs to sign off on it. I know the Justice Department has. That's likely to happen. In my opinion, this was all a done deal long before we even heard of it. I'm pretty sure that Rupert Murdoch, the head of Fox, wanted to get rid of this, and Donald Trump, his buddy, who he helped elect, basically said, "Yeah, we'll make it happen." So I'm sure that this is something that happened in back rooms a long time ago, and because of that, even though there's still some more formal bullshit that needs to go through, so there'll be a little bit more of a public drama about it. Like, it's been a done deal. I'm pretty sure. That being the case, like, like, if you have to think about it, like, if they're planning movies, right, and they know they're going to have X-Men and Fantastic Four, then, like, you don't need to, like, do anything with Cloak and Dagger. That, you know, you would maybe normally, but, like, if you're going to be able to bring the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is its own universe in and of itself, then that's storytelling 10, 15 years worth of movies that are going to be great. Fantastic Four, that just increases it exponentially because Fantastic Four has a huge amount of villains. Plus, you have a lot of the cosmic stuff. You've got the Silver Surfer. You've got Galactus. Like, there's all sorts of really incredible things that can happen that, you know, Marvel can simply explore without having to, you know, focus on some of the ancillary characters like Cloak and Dagger or fucking the Inhumans or even some of the street level characters that we've seen in the Netflix shows. So it makes sense that they would have wanted to make this show, anything about these characters, a show like this, as well as the Runaways and also the Inhumans. My theory is that the Inhumans, everything that they had sort of established was stuff that was pre-production for the actual film that they were planning, that was announced when they announced like everything for Phase 3 or whatever. But then they kind of pulled back on that. And then they finally just kind of decided, you know what, we're not going to do this. We're just going to, but we've done all this work already, so let's just make a television show out of it. That's my theory on what happened there. Now, if any of you don't know, like throughout maybe the last 10 years, now it's been maybe like around 7 or 8 years since Marvel was bought by Disney, Marvel proper, the actual comic book company, has been sidelining the X-Men to some extent, and trying to make the Inhumans like the important characters, because they knew that they didn't have the film rights to the X-Men, so they wanted to make the Inhumans like the outcast sort of members of society and really build that up. But like comic book readers weren't having it. I wasn't having it. And it was clear what they were doing. And as soon as they knew that they were going to get the X-Men, that Disney was going to get the X-Men, like they scrapped the Inhumans idea. And that happened a while ago. When we found out about Inhumans going on television, that was long before the Marvel, the Disney deal was announced. And so this has been, you hear things all the time like, oh, well, Kevin Feige's like, I don't know anything. I heard about this from the news. I don't believe one word of that. I love the man. I thank him for the gift of himself and everything he's offered us and will continue to offer us in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But like, he's lied to us. And I understand why, because like, he can't just come out and say, yeah, like this is happening, because it's all, you know, it's all backroom stuff that only they really know. But the fact that they do know it allowed them to make an adequate plan so that they're not, you know, completely shifting gears like in the middle of a journey, you know, that they've planned out. Like they had enough time to really kind of like rejigger their plan and take it in the direction that they want to, knowing where they're going now with the properties that should have always been with them. You know, Spider-Man was another one of these elements that like helped them, I think, to determine like what needed to happen in the cinematic universe and what can happen on television shows. So this is one of them. This is one that sort of like this was decided. Well, let's not spend too much money on it. Let's tell some good stories, get some good actors, throw it on Freeform, which is, you know, like a smaller sort of channel that Disney owns, and that'll satisfy those characters. And if it builds up enough of a following, and I do believe that like eventually we are going to see the Netflix characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to some extent, and maybe ultimately getting their own films. Maybe I believe so, because like Daredevil is one of the quintessential Marvel characters, you know, like. And so is Luke Cage, you know, and so is Iron Fist. And Jessica Jones is becoming one. So, like, these are characters that could really shine beyond the shows. And I think the fact that they are built up on the shows and then maybe given a boost of money to really take them to that next level would be awesome. And I think the same thing could happen with Cloak and Dagger. If people become big fans of, like, this show, then ultimately people will be aware of these characters, and that'll give them the pedigree and the extra value that would make it worth it for Marvel to then say, okay, well, let's bring these characters in now. And the fact that Marvel is going to get the mutants because the deal isn't going to be finalized officially, I think, until the end of the year, and that's when Marvel will start to be able to use the characters. So here, like, we didn't get any mention of mutants or that they're mutants, but ultimately that could be revealed, much like it was revealed in the comics, which ultimately was a retcon, but whatever. Now it's established as canon that Cloak and Dagger are mutants in the Marvel comics world. And so in that, now you could do the same thing here. You know, once it's established that there are mutants in this world, then it can be revealed that these two are actually mutants, that explosion at that rig actually triggered their mutation. So, because, I mean, obviously there was just the one dude, the Asian executive, who survived and everybody else died. And so the fact that these two survived, you know, whatever exposure they got, and Tandy's father didn't, you know, so there must be something else to them. And like, you could tell a story about, you know, some mystical sort of like kind of destiny thing that was sort of the underpinning of this episode. You could tell that, but like in the end, the reality is that like physically there's something different about these two that caused them to be the ones that were chosen or whatever. And so I do believe that ultimately that can happen, and I hope it will. But I am looking forward to more from the show. Clearly, like, we have a new villain. The cop has turned into some sort of villain, which I don't know the name of, but I'm sure some of you do. So we have some interesting stuff coming there. And finally, at the end, when Tyrone, even though he was left as being framed for murder of a cop, and we know that he's still part of a wealthy, you know, not wealthy, but like a middle-class family, he did wind up being the one that like had to live in the church and be sort of on his own and kind of poor. So it did kind of take it back to where the comics were, which is cool, and like that's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward. So we'll see where that goes. It was an enjoyable show, you know. It was an enjoyable summer show. Certainly not my favorite of the Marvel shows. I mean, even Luke Cage. Luke Cage is fucking awesome. Like, I don't know if you've seen Luke Cage, but you need to see Luke Cage if you haven't, because Luke Cage is freaking great. The drama, the acting, just fantastic. Daredevil, we don't even talk about how good that is. I really like Jessica Jones. I liked Iron Fist Season 1. We'll see what happens with Season 2. I like The Defenders Season 1. Hopefully they'll do a Season 2. So I like all this stuff, and I feel that all of it is a bit... All the Netflix stuff is of a slightly higher caliber than this. And if you haven't checked out The Gifted, I highly recommend it. The Gifted Season 2 is going to start airing in September, so you have some time to catch up on it. I did reviews as well on my channel per episode, so you can go back and sort of follow along my thoughts on those if you're interested. And so that's another show that I think also is of a much higher caliber than this one. They're actually willing to spend a little bit more money on representing powers for these characters that are there. And I think even though it's kind of spread out, like collectively, because there's so many mutants that are being used of note, you know, like Blink, fucking Thunderbird, the Cuckoos. Like, there's so many. It's really cool. And they're really leaning into that. It really gives it that kind of larger than life feel. On top of there being some really cool drama. Oh, also you got Polaris. Oh god, Polaris is the star of that show for me. She's such a great character, and like she's Magneto's daughter, and like they're really leaning into at least her power as like the mistress of magnetism or whatever. So if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. Anyway, this show, really enjoyed it. Look forward to more. And, I was happy to share my thoughts with you guys. I hope all of you are doing well. When the fall season rolls around, we're going to get some more Gifted, and that's when I'll be talking quite a bit about that. And beyond that, I hope all of you are well. Infinity War is coming out. I think it's already out on digital. When it comes out on Blu-ray, I already ordered it. It should be coming in about 2 weeks. I'll make sure to do a little review of that, because I never dropped the review for Infinity War, so I want to make sure I get my thoughts down for that, because that, like, everything that's been happening lately in the world of like mediated superhero stories, Marvel and DC beyond the comics, in television and in movies, Infinity War is like the quintessential ideal of what all of that could be, and it actually was that. Like, it actually was. It delivered on every fucking level that I would have wanted it to. It was so good. It was so fucking good. And I just feel like it's a gift. And like if I die tomorrow, having experienced like that whole journey of like Iron Man 1 all the way to fucking Infinity War, I mean, I'll die happy, you know, because that's something I never thought I would see in my lifetime, and I did see it, and it was so satisfying. So yeah, I'm gonna lay down some thoughts on that when I get my Blu-ray. So look forward to that. Beyond that, if you're curious about me and you want to keep up with my channel, with my videos, just click that little button under the screen there. It says subscribe. It'll help you keep up on the latest offerings. If you like what you saw here today, make sure you click a like. If you didn't like it, click a don't like. I like honesty. Honesty is the best policy, folks. Come on, man. Come on, folks. We're all Marvel fans here. We got to be honest with each other, you know? We got to live up to the ideals of these fucking superheroes that we love, that present to us almost like a template of like how to carry yourself in this world, you know? So yeah, if you hate me, click a don't like. If you like me, click a like. If you got some thoughts, throw down a comment. We'll have a little chat about it. Anyway, thanks for checking out my videos. Thanks for checking out my channel. As always, I want to remind you that if you haven't already, you better put an X in the box because ain't nobody checking me. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.